Battlefield 4 versus Battlefield 1. Which one looks better? Battlefield 4 was released at the back end of 2013, with Battlefield 1 coming out 3 years later in October 2016. 3 years is a fair length of time, and surely within that space we should have seen a big difference in graphics. This video is of course not designed to hate on one specific game. I love both of these games just as much, and I think they look fantastic. Battlefield 1 has definitely grown on me over the course of the last year or so, and I do play it a whole load these days. This video serves as more of an on-screen comparison with both 1440p cinematics and 1080p gameplay, all of which is in a very good frame rate for the most part. The reason I have this gameplay in 1080p is because that is the resolution I play on, whilst I do have a 1440p monitor, but that was used mainly for the cinematics. Personally, I think FPS games are better in 1080p at a higher frame rate, and then when I've got more cinematic games like Elite Dangerous or Grand Theft Auto, I play those on the 1440p monitor. It's a nice luxury, and if you have got the opportunity to try out gaming in 1440p, I would suggest it. So to start out, we've got some cinematic comparisons of Locker versus Fort de Vaux. If you've played Operation Locker, and I'm guessing most of you have, you'll know that the map is pretty bland inside with a lot of dull colours, a lot of browns. The lighting isn't fantastic, although it is great when you are just looking for pure infantry gameplay. The outside is incredibly bright though, and contrasts the rest of the map. Some people love this, others hate it, and I'd have to sit right on the fence. I think it looks okay, nothing more, nothing less. The map changes completely though when players start fighting, with the explosions and gunfights really taking off inside the close corridors and prison blocks. Fort de Vaux has a similar effect on me. It's not the best looking map on the game, but once players start fighting, it's great. Which map do you think looks better? I'd have to say that for a game that is 3 years older than Battlefield 1, Battlefield 4 holds up really well. I've put some gameplay together side by side that really shows the difference between the two games. Battlefield 4 certainly has a different style to BF1, and the speed of the game is far quicker. From someone who has played both games extensively, I would have to say that Battlefield 1 is my preferred game for infantry, although that wasn't always the case. I never used to like it, but after getting used to it, and DICE also bringing some much needed player movement updates, BF1 has become a great game. Now in terms of the way the games look, I think it's far easier to see on the gameplay side of things. The UI on Battlefield 1 is a bit more intrusive and does take up more of the screen. I think Battlefield 1 probably has the edge on 1080p gameplay if you have the settings turned up, but once you turn the settings down, as I know a lot of players have to because their rigs can't handle it, and sometimes you get a tryhard who wants to have the settings on low so they can maybe get an edge on an opponent, Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 1 look very much the same. Now in terms of vehicle gameplay, this is a very interesting one. We're dealing with different time periods, Battlefield 1 of course being the First World War and BF4 being modern day, maybe slightly into the future combat. Now BF4 for me blows Battlefield 1 out of the water when it comes to vehicles, but that's not down to the graphics, that's just down to the time period. I much prefer modern day vehicles. Tanks from World War 1 are pretty damn boring to look at. I mean, the FT-17 was cool to see at the start, and the Saint-Chamond tank was pretty neat, but they're not that interesting really. The planes are quite cool, and the detail on them when they fall to bits is excellent, but for me I much prefer Battlefield 4 and the modern day vehicles they have there. That's not to knock the graphics on either game, I think they both do a fantastic job. In 1440p you can definitely see that they both excel. Another comparison that I wanted to make that I felt was pretty similar between the two games was Silk Road versus Sinai Desert. There are some points during the cinematics that you'll see on screen now where I did get confused as to which was Sinai and which was Silk Road. I think this goes without saying. Battlefield 4 has really kept up with Battlefield 1 and has aged really well. At 1440p both games look superb, and I really think that DICE have gone out of their way with Battlefield 4 to make it look that good, and there's not much more they could do with Battlefield 1 to make it look better. I think the player models in Battlefield 1, however, are better. that is something that most people will agree on. In BF4, the player movements and things like that were great, but not quite as good as Battlefield 1. And things like the melee system do expose Battlefield 4 quite significantly, while in BF1 there are so many things that you get as extra. For example, if you get set on fire in BF1, the animations are fantastic. If you get bayoneted, although I hate it, but if you get bayoneted or meleeed, or run over by a car or by a horse or ragdolled by an explosion, it's far more realistic in BF1 than it is in BF4. Let me know down in the comments what you think. I was just using this as a little bit of a comparison. I've been wanting to compare the games for quite some time, and I might do a more detailed comparison between all of the Battlefield games running from the initial ones back in the early 2000s up to the ones we've got today. I might do that when Battlefield 1 is finished and the new game comes out at the end of 2018. Let me know what your favourite game is down below in terms of the graphics. Which looks better, or do they look pretty much the same?
That's a scout. One of theirs.